Apple App Store is the second largest app store with roughly 2.2 million of apps available for iOS. There is no doubt that the demand for a skilled iOS developer is all-time high, with recent trend projecting an approximate growth of 126% demand in the next decade. You will get to learn all the majority concepts involved in the process of creating a fully functional iOS app. Let me tell you what you will get to learn in this session. But before we begin this session, do subscribe to our channel and get regular updates on more information content. So the first topic that we will discuss is Introduction to Xcode. Then we will learn about Apple origin history, the touch base with development toolkit and Xcode download component. We will discuss frameworks iOS, architecture core iOS features, Cocoa Touch and kits towards the end. And then we will discuss the swift feature and data types. And then finally, we'll have a hands-on to wrap up today's session.
So I am using an Xcode version 12.4 and I am using a Macintosh version. If you go to the left top corner of your screen, you will see an Apple logo and you will see About This Mac. If you can click on About This Mac, it will show you the configuration of your Mac. So you're running actually Xcode 13. If you see on your Xcode, you will see Xcode 13 or 13.1. So you are actually running Swift 5.5. Okay, I am running 5.0. You are running 5.5. Okay, so this is basically your configuration of your machine. How much? What is your processor? What is your memory? What is the disk size? What is the graphics and all those things? It shows displays. It shows the storage. How much storage do you have? I have actually 2 hard disks installed, so it shows me 2 hard disks. It shows memory, and if you can upgrade your memory or not. You can check for support for upgrading. Unfortunately, my Mac does not support Xcode 13. So that's not going to be a problem with you people. That's fine because not much has changed. I'll explain you whatever has changed and I'll give you an intro to that. But this is where I am. I am running Swift 5 and you are running Swift 5.5. So there's a little bit of difference in our versions, and it talks about service. If you have Apple services, if you have taken any extended services, it would work on that. That's about how you look at the Macintosh. Giving you a brief introduction about the environment. I'll just close this up, close this off. This is the desktop. We all know. People who even from the Windows background know that this is the desktop. And down here, you see a strip which has some icons, a lot of icons, which you can click and open the applications. This is called the dock. Dock is a placeholder for your, it says if you are from Windows background, it's just simple like a taskbar, right? In Windows, on the bottom of the screen, you see the list of applications which are open or which are actually running. You can see them. So this is like a taskbar, but here it is a quick launch where you can quickly click and launch an application. It's kind of divided into 2 sections. There's a left section. If you see this line here, this section is which are the applications which you use very regularly. You can just put them on this side. You can drag and drop this side. They will be always available to you whenever you want to. And this side of the app part, this part of the dock is the place where your active applications are running. Your active applications may be running on the left bar also, but these are the applications which are not in the dock, but you started them. If you close these applications, they will disappear from the dock. Okay, and there are certain settings of the dock. For example, I click on, you see this arrow. If you are on this arrow, you have to on your Mac. If you're using Mac Mini, you have to right click. If you're using a Mac laptop, you have to use 2 fingers to double click on this bar. Okay, and there are certain options here, like turn hiding on. Turn hiding on means if you are not on the bottom of the screen, this dock will hide. Turn magnification on means When I hover my mouse over these icons will become big. Position on the screen. You can position on 3 places: left, bottom, right. Bottom is the most suitable position. It's up to you. It's your preference. You can position anywhere. Minimize using. It's just a animation. It doesn't really matter. Minimize using Gini effect or scale effect is a type of animation in which if I open an app like this, I open an app, how should it minimize? So that is the effect that it says. Now, specifically, if there is something known as dock preference, this is called the dock. As I said, this is called the dock. We have dock preferences. Preferences are like settings in iOS. I'll probably bring this down. So these are the size. You can change the size. Magnification, the same that you had earlier. Positioning. The important things that you might be probably interested in is minimize windows into application icon. This is one important setting that you might like to adjust. By default, what happens if you open more than one instances of an application, the instances will look an individual item here. For example, if you see my Safari is my browser. I have 6 of them. With this unchecked, minimize windows into application icon, with this unchecked, you will see 6 Safari icons here. So it's very handy, this setting. Animate opening applications is up to you. It's your preference. You want to animate, you want to dramatically just fill them up. Show indicators for opening applications. This is a setting. If you see on the bottom of the screen here, you see tiny little black dots. Can you see them? Some applications have dots, some do not have dots. This is an indication that your application is actually active. Okay. And then finally, we have show recent applications in the dock. Is this what we see? Recent applications are there in the dock. These are your dock preferences. Now, as a developer, you may not have 100% control over your system. You may not have. Can you see this system preferences icon? Can you see this? If you're not able to see this, if it is not on your screen, there is a button on your screen on your desktop. If you're using a Windows keyboard, you will have to use a Windows key. If you are using Apple keyboard, you will have to use the command key. Use command space, you will get the spotlight. Can you find that? Spotlight is a kind of a search in iOS or Mac. It's a deep search. It's always indexed. This spotlight is so deep, my guys. You will be so happy with this search that if you have forgotten the name of the document on a Windows desktop, if you forget the name of the document, it's hard to find. But this spotlight, my friends, is so powerful. If you can remember a word that you have written in that document, it will deep search the documents to find that document. For example, let me say, let's say I raise invoices, okay? I do trainings, I raise invoices. I say KKBK is the name of my bank. You see, I have files that you can see which do not have the word KKBK in the name, but that name is in my invoice. So it deep searches your documents. Dear principal, we don't do principal for dear, but if I have dear principal, see here, there are documents in my app, in my system where there is something known as dear principal written in those documents. That is Spotlight. So the shortcut is command space. If you're using Windows keyboard, it is Windows space. Otherwise, on the right top corner, you can see this icon, this lens. Can you see this lens? You click at that and you'll get it. Okay. Right. Now, from right to left, these are notifications, the messages which I get from all the agents that are installed. It may be Gmail, it may be my mail account. Then this is the name of the user which is logged in. This is my login user, the time, the battery, the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, if I am sharing my screen or not, and if I have a sync manager, whatever background apps are running, they're visible here. This is your toolbar. This is your taskbar actually. Right side of this top corner is your taskbar. Left side of this is your menu. In Windows, what happens whenever you open an application, each application has its own menu. But in case of Mac, this is the place where the menu comes. Each application does not have a menu. The menu comes here. This is the menu bar. The left corner is the menu bar. Okay. So currently I am on my desktop. So it's showing Finder. Finder is equal to my computer on your Windows. This is Smiley is my computer. This is your desktop. If I open any other application, for example, I am in Zoom. I click on Zoom, I get the Zoom menu. This menu will change based on the application that you are using. I use Wiser, menu will change. Okay, so that's the common place where the menu actually sits. Now, Finder is a place where you actually search all your documents. It's like my computer. So it has, based on each user, it has its own desktop, applications, documents, downloads, music, and all those stuff. Now, in Mac, when you install any application, 99% of the time, the application will go and sit into applications folder. As you can see here, I have Xcode. I have Xcode 103. This is the older version. I required it for one of my projects because the project was not capable of building on new versions. So I have 10.3. This is 12.4. I have all these applications installed on my Mac. Now, apart from any application that you download from Microsoft, please note this. Microsoft has a typical behavior that it is dependent on some file locations. Like some frameworks have to be installed in C/programs, C/users, or something. Mac is not dependent on file system. This Xcode, which is installed here, it's a full-blown package. It's a full-blown package. You can copy it and paste it on another machine, and it will still work. So 99% of the applications which you install on a Mac, they are transportable, and the copy that you copy and paste to another machine or another location will still work. It does not depend on file locations. But if you see, I have Visual Studio. I work on Xamarin. I changed this location because this is Microsoft application. I changed the location of this particular file. This is going to blow off. It's not going to work because it has dependencies on the file system. There are frameworks it installs in different locations. It has dependencies. Whereas other applications, for example, Safari, or maybe say Chrome or Firefox, you can launch these applications even from downloads or any other location. So the Mac environment is a little different in terms of file configurations. We don't have that keys that generally Windows stores in terms of monetizing their application, where key is stored somewhere and the application checks for the keys. It's not that way in Mac. So Xcode is installed, and to install Xcode, all you need is free Apple account. A free Apple account is basically any account that you are using on any of your Apple devices. It can be your iPhone, it can be your iPad, it can be your iPod or your watch or something. Any account that you have on Apple can be used to download Xcode. The best part of iOS development is Xcode is the tool for all the development on Mac. It can be iOS, TV, watch, Mac, server, anything. Is the only tool available. A single tool, and most importantly, this tool is free to download. The tool is free to download. If you go with Windows, you want to install Visual Studio, there's a community edition. But if you belong to a company which is more than 100 participants, or more than 20 developers, you have to purchase license. That's not the case with Xcode. You don't have to purchase a license for Xcode development. Learning Xcode, developing with Xcode is totally free. However, deployment costs you more. If you want to deploy your Xcode application on any device, we have something known as simulators. Simulators are like applications that simulate how an application would look like when it is running on a device. We have different types of simulators, different sizes of simulators based on the Xcode version. So we can test the application on these multiple devices. So they are simulators. Okay. People who have worked on Android, you have worked on emulators. Emulators are virtual machines. They actually take memory, they actually take the CPU from your machinery. But simulators, on the other hand, the Xcode simulators, they are basic, simple apps. They don't consume your hardware, they don't consume your memory, they just run as a basic application. Okay, so iOS works on simulators, Android works on emulators. It tries to mimic the actual device. Android tries to mimic actual device. Xcode does not do that. Okay. All right, guys. So this is about the dock. This is about the Finder, and you have different views of the Finder. You have the this view, which is the icon view. We have the list view, in which you can see the list of items that you have. We have the column view, in which you can navigate to different sections of a folder. For example, if I'm in documents and I go to my, let's say, projects, and I go to iOS, and I go to landmark, I can navigate it in the land in this kind of column-wise representation. And this is another representation in which it's basically folder-based or file-based representation. One thing I like about Mac primarily since I've started using is whenever I click on something, it shows me a preview. This doesn't really happen on Windows. We have to open it and we have to see if it opens with an application. But here, if the application is supported, if the document is supported, the preview is already available. This is one nice thing about the Finder here that I like the most about being a Mac user. Now, Xcode. Now, every time you start an application, you have to make two decisions. Okay, I'll start a new presentation for this course. Okay, all right. So a brief introduction about Apple. I have just been using this. You will not see more than 20 slides from me. Don't worry about it. We are not going to work on a slide-based model. It would be a hands-on, totally hands-on programming experience. A few things I do want you to know. That is where I have put up these slides up. Okay. So let's listen about the history of Apple computers. So Steve Jobs and his friend John Scully, they started Apple computers in 1980s, early 1980s. Okay, Steve Jobs had a mentality. He actually met some people at Xerox. You all know what is Xerox. It has become a brand. It has become a name that Xerox means taking a copy, but it was actually a company. Xerox was a company. So he got an idea from Xerox that we should have some visual presentation of data. Previous computers did not have visual presentations. So when he met people at Xerox, he thought about, okay, let's have a visual presentation of data. But Steve Jobs and John Scully, they had a conflict of interest. You see, Microsoft sells everything. It sells the operating system, it sells the MS Office, it sells the Visual Studio, it sells everything. Now, the idea of Steve Jobs was we would not be a product based company, we would be a service based company. But Jobs' Scully was, if Microsoft is making money by selling products, why can't we? So they had conflict of interest. So Steve Jobs was forced to leave Apple computers. They started in a small garage. He was forced to leave. He started a new company called Next Step. It was his next step in his career. He started Next Step Software Inc. in 1993. There was a guy called Brad Cox. Okay. Earlier, we had programming languages which were like, I'm not sure if you have heard of pagers, if you have even seen pagers. But when we were young, we have seen pagers. Pagers were like handheld small devices, smaller than your phone, which used to receive messages. You could page a message, like drop a message, like an email. And the languages used then were very primitive. And Brad Cox was at that point of time working, and he was using C++. But Brad Cox was not happy the way C++ handles oops concepts. So Brad Cox was not really happy with C++ oops because structs and classes behaved the same. I can change a struct to a class, I can change a class to a struct. He was not happy with pointers, he was not happy with the things. So he invented a language called Objective-C. He invented a language. And when Steve Jobs came to know that Brad Cox has done something which is innovative, where we don't have to worry about classes and structures and the differentiations. He actually, it was a free open source. He did it for himself. But Steve Jobs purchased a license from him for Objective-C and started using it for Next Step software, right? Now, how many of you have heard about Kim Thompson, Dennis Ritchie? Tell me something about Dennis Ritchie. Dennis Ritchie is the person who invented C programming. Kim Thompson, Dennis Ritchie, and other couple of guys, they were working at Bell Laboratories. They were working on building operating system called Unix. Okay. I don't remember the name of the other two guys. Kim Thompson, Dennis Ritchie definitely were there. They were working at Bell Labs to build Unix. Their effort took almost 10 years, and Bell Labs dropped the program. Okay, listen to this carefully. They dropped the program. But these people, they were very close to completion. But Bell Labs did not listen to them. They had already invested a lot of money, a lot of time into it. Bell Labs didn't listen to him. So they made an underground. You have seen, right? In sci-fi movies, you have seen people building a underground lab where they do their scientific experiments. You have seen that? So they built their lab underground and they actually finished the Unix. They finished the Unix. But since Unix was proprietary, it was, what do you say? It was presented by Bell Labs, or it was, let me say, what do you say? How do you say? Invested by Bell Labs. They could not sell it, but they did not want their effort to go in waste. So they gave it to the University of California that this is an operating system, try it. They gave it to the University of California. And the university was so excited in the way how writing simple commands, we can talk to the entire operating system. We can talk to the operating system. We can talk to RAM. We can talk to kernel. They were so excited. They took it and they made it a regular curriculum in their university. Again, Steve Jobs would not fall behind. He took a license of it and he started using Unix as the base of Next Step, right? And this Unix is not the base Unix. It's not the base Unix which was developed by Ken Thompson or Dennis Ritchie. He modified it based on his requirement. And that software that he modified is called Daemon. This is not for a developer to understand. It's basically for what do you say, support or a support personnel to understand. But I'll tell you, you can install Windows on any machine that you purchase. It can be Lenovo, it can be Dell, it can be Asus, it can be anything. You can install anywhere. But there's a difference between Windows and Mac, where on the Mac, the chipset that is installed on the Mac, it has specific instructions to read specific operating system. And as per the licensing system of Apple, you cannot install Apple OS on non-Mac machines. Even if you try, you will require that daemon which I said. The daemon is written on the chip. The daemon actually tells the chip to find the hard disk, to find the operating system, to start the operating system. This is not the case with Windows. So Mac has its own set of security so that it cannot be pirated, right? So Steve Jobs takes that version of Unix and installs and starts working on the next step. Now, what happens is there comes a time in Apple computers after Steve Jobs left that there was a time when Apple computer was almost about to fall. They were at a verge of closure. At this point of time, Scully went back to Steve Jobs and he actually incorporated in the books it is written that Apple acquired Next Step, but they incorporated Next Step software and they got some investments from Microsoft. That was the effort from Steve Jobs. Microsoft has investments in Apple computers. Now, Next Step was written because they acquired it. They wanted to show that we acquired it. They named it as Cocoa. Okay, so Cocoa is a framework that we will use to develop applications. And for mobile applications, there is a specific framework. It's a piece of Cocoa. Cocoa is a large library which works on Mac, servers, phones, TVs, and everything. But it has a small stream called Cocoa Touch, which works on handheld devices like iPad and iPhone and iPod. If you had come here in iOS development a few years ago, you would have seen Next Step everywhere. Next Step initially was using an open source compiler. Okay, it was using an open source compiler which used to compile multiple languages. There was a compiler which used to compile Java, C, C++, Objective C, and all those languages. So to maintain, to retain, to not to have clashes between languages, all the names of the classes in this library start with Next Step, NS. Okay, so string. You all know what is string. String is a string or like a name or something. So it is called NS string. An integer is called NS integer. A number is called NS number. To avoid ambiguity, everything was named as NS. But now we have a different compiler. We call this as LLDB. Please note if you want, we have a new compiler called LLDB. Okay. So 1996, Steve Jobs came back. And then iPod was released. You can see this history. Oh, oops, sorry. So first thing they did was they released iMac in 1998. 2001, they released an iPod, which was a sensation. A small, tiny little piece of hardware which can run up to 200 songs that they produce. That masterpiece was developed by Apple. Then they released the iPhone, first ever touch-based device in the market. And if you see the statistics here, Apple sold 270,000 units in just 2 days. Can you imagine? Very first handheld device, and they top 1 million units in 45 days. Nobody has touched that mark. Even being so costly, they have ranked the top. And then 11th July 2008, the iPhone development kit, the Xcode that you are having, when you install Xcode, you get a lot of things. I'll show you that. The Xcode that you install, that was released in 2008, and I have been working since 2009. It took me time to install. I was actually doing phishing. I was trying to install it on Windows, but eventually I had to go and get a Mac. It was very hard. So I started in 2009 and iPhone SDK.
Hello everyone. Intellipaat has an iOS development training course where you will get trained by industry experts. In this course, you will learn all the important concepts such as iOS architecture, iOS SDK, Objective C, core data services, testing, and many more. Reach out to us if you are interested in knowing more details about our program.
You can download from app stores. It's free of cost, but testing is not. Okay. And for anything, like I said, when you download Xcode, Xcode is the tool of your development, is the tool for working with mobile development. So whenever you download Xcode, these are what you get. Every object-oriented programming or every mobile development programming requires an objective-oriented programming or a OOPS programming. Now it is Swift. So we will be learning Swift 5. It requires a library or framework or SDK or package, whatever you call it, based on your knowledge. It's a package. Like I said, Cocoa is the package which is for entire Apple development, and Cocoa Touch is the package for touch-based devices like iPhone, iPad, iPod. Then you need a suite of development tools. In our case, we need an IDE. IDE, I hope you know IDE means Integrated Development Environment, and we need Xcode and Interface Builder. They are all built into the tool that you downloaded. And finally, to test our application, we need a runtime. People who have worked on Android might be knowing that earlier we were using Dalvik virtual machine. Now we are using Android runtime. Do you agree? People from the Android background. The runtime was Dalvik. Now it is ARK, Android runtime, IRT. So initially, when this project was given to a group, Dalvik is a place where this development was done. The Android development was done. And I think you know about JVM. So I write a code in Java and I don't know the target. The target might be TV, the target might be mobile, the target might be set-top box. Okay. So I create a binary. Binary is zeros and ones. So the JVM is a machine on the target. It is a set-top box, it's a TV, it's a mobile. It's a machine on the target which can understand the binary. Okay, that is JVM. Okay. Now, in case of iOS, since it is proprietary, now see the difference here, guys. Android is open source. Anybody on this earth can start building Android phones. You can have Android phones starting from maybe like $50 to up to $1,000, right? But iOS is proprietary. So as an iOS developer, we don't really worry about the runtime because the runtime is on the system. It's not open source. It's a closed system. So the phone on which you are trying to install will always have the environment to run the application. It's basically a set of libraries, set of packages which can understand your binary and present on your screen. That is called runtime. Okay. So 4 things we need. The programming language, which we are using is Swift. We need the framework. It is Cocoa Touch. We need a suite of development tools, and we will be using Xcode. And we need a runtime, which can be a simulator or a device. So when you download Xcode, this is what you get. You get the Xcode environment, the development set. It's an Apple product. It's free to download. It's a total complete solution. It also provides setup for local, GitHub. Earlier, like I said, earlier we used to use GCC, Global Compiler, and Global Debugger, which was for multiple languages. That is why it was known as next step, NS string, NS number. Now we are using the compiler built by Apple, which is LLDB. We get instruments. What are instruments? Instruments are tools to check the performance of your application, how your application is performing, how much memory it is consuming, how much network it is taking, how much battery consumption it has. All these things you can micromanage using instruments. Along with Xcode, you also get simulators. Like I said, in Android, you get emulator, which is a virtual machine. In iOS, you get simulator, which is an app which presents how your application would look like. It may not show you the performance. It may not show you the capabilities because the capability will depend on the Mac that you are using. You're using Mini 4 GB RAM, your performance will be slow. You're using a MacBook Pro 32 GB RAM, your performance will be fast. So you cannot evaluate the performance of the application on a simulator. In Android, you can evaluate because it is a emulated hardware. It represents the actual configuration. We don't get that in iOS. Finally, we get Interface Builder. Interface Builder is a tool which allows you to design the user interface, visualize it, and connect the behaviors. People who are from the Android background, what is an ID? There's a property called Android ID. What is that property? What do you use that property? So, like you have ID in Android, we have connections in iOS. We also identify UI using connections. Okay, so Interface Builder will allow you to connect the UI with the code. Okay, like your XML in Android is connected with Java or Kotlin using set content view or using find view by ID. Similarly, Interface Builder will help you connect the UI with the code. You understand that? So these are the four things that you get when you download Xcode. You might not have seen it yet, but I will walk you through with each of these as we progress further. Today will be mostly theoretical, and mostly today will be theoretical. After that, we will all go practical. Okay. So there are these frameworks. There are tons of frameworks. Even when I have been working on iOS for the last 12 years. I myself don't know all the frameworks. Now, it's a continuous learning process. Apple has a continuous building process. We have a continuous learning process. So we have to learn every time. Things will change and we have to learn. So we have frameworks, which are the libraries which can be used for development, for compilation, for database, for UI, for testing, all of things. And they are placed in a secure location called system library frameworks. This is secure. You cannot really see that directly. It's a hidden library. I can show you how to find it, but you're not really supposed to mess with it. The base of Cocoa is foundation. Foundation is the framework which is the base of entire Cocoa. It gives you the basics of the language, data types, arrays, collections, strings, dates, timers, threads. All the basics are there inside the foundation framework. So basically, to start with, we will be dealing with only foundation. As a beginner, we will start with foundation. Then we have the app kit. App kit is all about user interface. It's also called UI kit. You want to put a button or a label or a text or something onto your UI, you would use the app kit or the UI kit. Then we have core data. Core data is basically data storage. Now, people who have come from web background, okay, this is especially for you people who have come from web background, you might be storing data in SQL servers or in MySQL or in Oracle. To do that, you actually have to install those softwares to interact with those softwares. However, there is a lightweight relational database on every mobile, Android, iOS, BlackBerry, whatever you take. There is a lightweight database on every device. There is a SQLite engine, that is the interaction portion where your SQL commands can be translated into database. It's already present on every phone. Maybe 4 years back, we used to directly talk to SQLite, but then Apple created a new framework called Core Data. Core Data is a framework which talks to SQLite, but we don't talk in SQL. We don't say select star from table where. We don't use SQL commands. We use Swift language. So it's basically a package which runs over SQL and you don't have to talk to SQL directly. Okay. Now, let me explain you this mechanism, how it works. All right. I don't know if you have heard of this before or not, but let me explain you. What is garbage collector? So basically, every time you start an application on any environment, whether it is Unix, Linux, or Windows, a specific amount of memory is allocated to that particular project. Okay. A very specific amount of memory is allocated. No matter how much RAM you have, no matter how much hard disk space you have, doesn't matter. So for an Android application, it's 64 KB RAM is allocated to an application. And for an iOS application, 1 MB RAM is allocated for each process or each application that you start. That's called the virtual memory. That is the place where each of your classes, variables, and functions are allocated. So the functions, they execute in that virtual memory of 1 MB. There are two types of data in every environment. One is known as value type variable, and one is known as a reference type variable. So, like I mentioned, every application is given some amount of memory by the operating system to execute the code that you have written. Okay, that's called the stack memory. Okay, stack memory for Android is, as I said, 64 KB, and for iOS it is 1 MB. It holds the variables and methods execution for that current class that you're executing right now. Now, value types are those variables which store data in the stack. Okay, so in iOS application, you have 1 MB stack. In a class, if you create 2 integers, 2 strings, 2 floats, you have created these variables in the stack memory. If you have classes, I hope you understand what a class is, right? Classes are reference types. Classes are stored in heap memory. Now, what is heap memory? We understand, I told you, 1 MB of stack memory is allocated for a program. What is heap memory? Let's say 4 programs are running. So 4 programs will consume 4 MB RAM. The operating system itself will consume somewhere around 1 MB or 2 MB RAM. Whatever is left over with the operating system is called heap. So when I create a class like person or employee or student, if it is a class, it's a reference type. The data is stored in the available memory with the operating system, and a reference pointer to that memory is assigned to the variable. If I say variable person equals new employee, the employee will be stored in the memory, the mobile memory. The memory address of that will be stored in the person variable, because we cannot store all the values inside the application. If I am taking images or videos, the videos will go beyond 1 MB. For an iPhone Pro, the image size itself is more than 12 MB. How can we store that inside the application? We cannot store that because we have only 1 MB memory. So the object is stored somewhere inside the memory, and the memory reference, the location of that object in memory, is saved inside the variable. So what we are saving is not the object. We are saving the memory address of the object. Okay. Now, what garbage collector actually does? Garbage collector checks that heap. Is there any object which is not referenced by a class? Let's say I was in login page I went to registration page. I clicked an image. The image is stored in heap. Then I thought, let me not register now because I already have a login ID. So I go back. Okay, I go back. So the registration page, if you're coming from Android background, that activity is finished. The activity is closed. If you are coming from web, that page which was taking the image is closed. So we no longer need that image. So what garbage collector does is it checks, is there any class in the current running applications which is referring to this image? If the answer is no, it will clean up that memory and it will reuse for reallocation for some other purpose. That is the job of garbage collector. It's a complex mechanism because it has to check all the running applications, all the classes which are active, all the variables which are allocated. It has to check if there is a reference which is pointing to this memory. It's a complex mechanism. It takes time. You might have seen, probably, you might have observed, sometimes Android application gives you a message that the operation is taking too long. You want to wait or kill. Has anybody seen this message? That is the time where the garbage collector is trying to get the memory back from your usage. And it is taking time. It's a complex mechanism. It's a complex algorithm. It has to check every application, every page of the application, every variable of that application. Now, to your surprise, iOS does not have garbage collector. iOS does not have garbage collector at all. It works on something known as, there was a guy called Darwin in the 1980s. He designed a mechanism called reference counting. Reference counting is a mechanism in which the application itself checks if the class is referring to a variable or not. If it is not referring to a variable, then deallocate the memory. So that is the mechanism on which iOS works. When you say alloc, memory is allocated. When you say release, a pointer which is pointing to the memory is nullified. I'll explain you in detail in upcoming sessions, but it's basically, if you want to understand this, there's no garbage collector. We just have a variable in memory which counts how many classes are looking at this variable. There can be one class, there can be two classes. I pass an object from one class to another. I have logged in. I went to profile page. Whatever information I got from login, I passed it to profile page. So two people, two classes are referencing to the same data. So the reference count of that object, that person who is logged in, is 2. If you go back from the profile page, the number of classes referencing to that variable is 1. If that reference becomes 0, iOS does not run a garbage collector. It just checks. This is the memory address from 1024AAAF to 2024FEFE. This memory is free today, as of now. So I can give it to any other class. That is where we interact with ARC. Please take a note, ARC, automatic reference counting. This is the mechanism in which iOS checks how many classes are referencing to a variable in memory. It can be 1, 2, 3. If you do not release a variable, it will keep hanging in the memory because the system will have a count more than 1. If the count is 0, the memory is reusable. But if you do not release the object, the count is greater than 0, the memory cannot be reused. We call this as memory leak. Take a note. We call this as memory leak. And if the memory keeps on leaking over and over and over, there will be a point of time where the system will not have enough memory to allocate new objects. And these situations, if the system does not have enough memory to allocate new objects, it will kill the application which is consuming the maximum amount of memory. That can be your current application itself. Okay, so two words you have to remember: ARC, automatic reference counting. We'll talk in detail about it later. Okay, let's move forward. Let's move at the architecture of iOS applications. So iOS application, if you look at the iOS app mobile, at the base we have the kernel. I told you, it's built from iOS. It's built from Unix. Steve Jobs purchased the license from the University of California, and he built the entire system on Unix. So the base is the kernel. Kernel contains the basic hardware interaction, communication with your battery, your Bluetooth, your headphones, and all those things, the operating system. The base hardware is handled by the kernel. On top of kernel comes the operating system, which is iOS. Okay, it comes the operating system. This is which handles the entire framework or runtime. Everything is handled by the core OS. On top of that comes the media, which talks about your audio, video, interactions with the audio layer and the video layer. Then comes Cocoa Touch. Cocoa Touch is our place. This is the place where we play. This is the place where we write the codes. And on top of Cocoa Touch, when we write our code, we build our apps. So your apps will be built on Cocoa Touch. You are a mobile app developer. If you were an Apple developer, probably you will be working here in Core OS or probably in media. But we are mobile app developers. We'll be working here on top of Cocoa Touch, right? Okay, so there are some Core OS features that we will study one by one as we do. So we have threading. We will talk about threading a lot. We'll talk about a lot about threading. There's since it's Unix, they are POSIX threads. Okay, we will talk about networking, communication with API, communication with web services. We will talk about file system access. How does Apple allow file system access, and how is security maintained with the data of the application? We will talk about. Bonjour is basically probably a French word or German word, which is like communicate, and we have DNS services which run the web services. We have local information. Local information talks about the language of your preference or language of your choice. Your application may be running on on English or French or German or Spanish. That is local. Memory allocations, I just gave you a very brief introduction about the memory allocation, about a heap and stack. We will talk about this further as we move forward. And then we have mathematical computations like logs and exponentials and all, right? And Cocoa Touch. What does Cocoa Touch, this library? This is the one that we will be actually working in. We will be working on Cocoa Touch library. Cocoa Touch library, as I said, is a part of the main framework, Cocoa framework, which works on touch-based devices. That's called Cocoa Touch. It has something known as storyboards. Storyboards are, if you people who are from the Android background, you have activities, right? Activities is an activity is one unit of user interface, whereas a storyboard is actually a compilation of multiple activities. A storyboard can contain hundreds of activities or hundreds of user interface components. That is called a storyboard. It's called storyboard because it tells a story about the application. You will see as we move further. Gesture recognition. This is one component in which there are components in mobile like image or a label. For example, you might have a label which says accept terms and conditions. And when you click, it shows the terms and conditions. Or there might be an image. When you click on an image, the image enlarges. So that is called gesture or gesture, whatever you call in your accent. Gesture recognition. Multitasking. is a feature in which an application can perform more than one task at the same time. We will work on this on a very real-time application, a very large scale. There are three types of ways in which we can do multitasking, and we will learn all the three of them. We have file sharing, in which you would have might have seen in, if you're using a Apple device, you might have seen, if you long press on a image or on a document, it gives you sharing options from the bottom of the screen, like share on WhatsApp or Facebook or mail or something. Have seen that? Then we have notifications. Notifications are a way of sending messages to devices which accept to receive messages. For example, when you get WhatsApp messages or Facebook messages or a friend request, you get those messages. We will talk about data protection, how data is protected in the iOS application. Where is the data stored? I'll show you the location also. And we'll talk about documents. Documents is a place where we store data which we want to share across devices. Let's say, for example, you have an application in which you have tasks, or say you have to get some groceries from the stores, and you want to share your list with your wife or your roommate or something. So we have documents there where we can do a cloud storage in which the data will be synchronized across the applications under the same group. The group has to be same. So data will be synchronized among people who are in the same group of applications. There are more things, like we have address book, which stores our addresses. We can fetch the address of a user. Event kit, in which we take care of events which are happening on our device, like touch, swipe, and something. There is the map kit, which talks about Apple Maps, though most people don't prefer Apple Maps. They use Google Maps. Looking at the time, we will look at the Google Maps as well. We have a message user interface in which we can send messages from the application. Now, something that you have to look into and remember here is Apple does not allow sending messages or doing anything without the user consent. So you cannot send SMS, you cannot send mail without user consent. You will be presented with a user interface which will show the data that you want to send to the person that you want to send, the subject, and everything. And the user will have to click on the send button manually. You cannot send messages in the background. It is not possible. Okay. Then we have iAd. iAd is a service in which you can present ads in your apps, like games and something. You can present apps. And the most important thing, the most thing that we will be working, 90% of the time we'll be working on UI kit. UI kit, user interface kit. This is where we will work all the time. This is where we have buttons, we have labels, we have text, we have images, we have everything that we need to present the user interface. This is where we'll be working 90% of our time after we complete Swift. Okay? After we complete Swift, here will work. Okay. So here are some of the Swift features that you might want to know. We will start coding Swift very soon. We have some Swift features which are enhanced. See, Objective-C was built in 1986. It is a very old language. Whereas Swift is a third generation language, very fast, very quick, very responsive, capable of handling errors, does not allow the developer to make exceptions without instinctive knowledge. If you are making an error, you are making an error with knowledge. You are not allowed to make errors without knowledge. If you want your application to fail, you will make it fail. But Swift will not allow you to do it unless you ask the application to fail. It handles a lot of things. Okay. So there's something known as ABI, application binary interface. It's like is a way in which you can distribute your application as packages.
Hello everyone. Intellipaat has an iOS development training course where you will get trained by industry experts. In this course, you will learn all the important concepts such as iOS architecture, iOS SDK, Objective C, core data services, testing, and many more. Reach out to us if you are interested in knowing more details about our program.
Since Swift is capable of cross-platform development, you can ship the frameworks across multiple platforms. It has safe coding. What do you mean by safe coding? How many of you, when you were learning Java or you were learning JavaScript or anything, how many of you have come across null pointer exceptions? So null pointer exception is a problem where I have created a variable, but I have not allocated any memory to it. Like I say, int a. I never said int a is equal to 10. And then I try to print it. What will happen? There is nothing in memory. There is no value stored. You are trying to access something which does not exist. That is called a null pointer exception. Now, when we say Swift is safe coding, it means Swift will not allow you to access a variable which is not been allocated. If I simply say a variable name and do not assign a value and you try to print that variable, the compiler itself will stop you from proceeding, saying that you never allocated memory to this variable. Null pointer exceptions are so big a headache for developers because you have to search and search and search which variable is going wrong. So this is a big boon to the developers that Swift does not even allow you to print. Forget about using it. It doesn't even allow you to print a variable which is not allocated. Okay. And the third thing is LSP. LSP is Language Service Protocol. Basically, what it says is you can use Swift for background applications, for server applications, for Mac. It is a universal language for all it, and it provides you syntax highlighting, autocomplete, and it gives you tool text. Right? So these are the things that are new to Swift. These were not there, maybe they were there in Objective C or they are there in Kotlin. But the way that they are here in Swift, it's totally enhanced. Type inference. So type inference is a way in which the language identifies what type of data are you trying to store. If I say variable name is equal to Alex, it's a string. So the system will understand it's a string. If you say variable integer equal to 10, it will understand it's an integer. Okay, so that's the type inference that we have in Swift, which was earlier not there in Objective-C. We had to explicitly declare the type. Now also you can explicitly declare types, and there are certain instances where you will be forced to declare the type because the system cannot infer what the type is. But most of the cases, type inference means that based on your assignment, a is equal to 10 means an integer, a is equal to 10.0 means a decimal. It understands it. We have generics. Let's say I want to add two integers. Okay, I'm supposing you understand the difference between integer, float, string, right? I'm not mistaken here. Let's say I want to add two integers and return the value. Okay, so let's say I want to create a method called add integers. Okay, now I want to add doubles or floats. So I'll create another method called add double. Then I want to add names, first name and last name. So I'll create another method called add names. We will do this, okay? We will do this. Now I have three methods. The basic functionality of these three methods is adding two things, adding two integers, adding two doubles, adding two strings, right? Is the basic functionality same? Now, if I create three different methods, all of them by the name add, but with different parameters. One add function will take integers, one add function will take doubles, one add function will take strings. This is called method overloading. Method overloading is a concept in which the names of the methods remain the same, but the parameters change. In one add function, I am passing integers. In another add function, I am passing doubles. In another add function, I am passing strings. So the names of the methods are same. So for a developer, when I say add, I will see three methods: passing integers, passing doubles, passing strings. Return type does not matter. Please note this. Method overloading, return type does not matter. It is only the parameters that matter. Either the type of parameter or the number of parameter should be different. Take a note of this somewhere. Method overloading means the name of the method will be same, the type of the parameters or the number of the parameters will change. Return type does not matter. This is called method overloading. Did you understand? Okay. Now, here, now can you explain me how generics helps me in polymorphism? So basically, like I explained, polymorphism is like having multiple functions with the same name, but different parameters, right? Generics means having one function which can take any type of parameter and perform the same action. So it can add two integers, it can add two doubles, it can add two strings. We don't have to specify the type of data to be passed. We can use any word. Generally in the industry, we use a term called T. T is just a placeholder. So we can say add T and T. So T plus T will be returned. It's a placeholder. You can use any word. T is basically the word used in the industry. But instead of having three different functions, add integer, add string, add float, instead of overriding, you create one method which take generic parameters. It is generic. Any type of data you pass it, it will perform the same function. The function will be same. The function will not change, right? The function will not change. The feature will remain the same. The performance will be adding two things. Yes, I will add two things. That is a generic function. We will do all these things. I'm just trying to introduce you to the stuff, what we have in Swift. Okay. Closure. I heard some people who were working on React. Yes? All right. I think most of you pretty much, because you are from Kotlin or web, you have an idea of anonymous functions or lambdas. Now, closures are not old in iOS. Closures were introduced in 2014 or 2015. They were not there in iOS before. We had something called as callbacks. Okay, we had callbacks. We had to work only on callbacks. We have something known as protocols. I will explain you what are protocols. So iOS has introduced closure syntax in which if you are doing an asynchronous application or asynchronous task, this is a piece of block or a block of code which will be executed after the task is completed. It is an anonymous function. It does not have a name, or I can say it does not need to have a name, but closures in iOS can be first level participants of Swift. That means they can be created as variables, but they are self-contained blocks of specific functionality, and they are called after completion of a particular task. Okay, let's go to the next point, optionals. Now this is a great change in Swift. So basically, optionals are variables which may or may not have value. Okay, for example, I am in a list of products. Okay, I'm in a list of products as Amazon, and I have a page which will show me the details of the products. The details of the products will only be available to the next page when I click on a particular item. So on page 2, product details is a variable which is empty. It does not have a value to begin with. Or let's say for you people, you are freshers. If your HR has to write your profile into the database, previous company, previous employment, numbers of years of experience, everything will be empty, correct? Yes or no? So your experience, your previous company, your employment details, everything will be empty, correct? These are called optionals. And this is to make sure that the developer intentionally knows that this value might be empty. And if the value might be empty, it is the developer job to make sure to open that empty box in such a way that we don't get null pointer exception. Optionals help you in null pointer exception safety. It's up to you how you handle the null pointer. It may have data, it may not have data. So you have to handle the data properly, right? All right, guys. So we were talking about optionals. Optionals is a way in which we avoid getting null pointer exceptions, because the developer always knows if the value exists or not. So like in Java, we can just declare a variable, and when you try to print it, it will crash because the variable was never initialized. But when you create a variable which is an optional and it is not initialized, the compiler itself will complain that you are using a variable which is not initialized. So it protects you from null checks. Okay. Then we have something known as tuples. Now, tuples is an interesting feature introduced by Swift. A tuple is basically, you can think of it as a set of values. Okay. It can be any type of values. It can be a set of integer and string. It can be a set of integer and double. But with tuples, what Swift gave us is a capability to return more than one value from the function. As of now, Swift is the only language which can return more than one value from a function. All other languages, they return just one value. But Swift can return multiple values with the use of tuples. Then we have the switch statement. Switch statement in Swift is so much enhanced, so much powerful, that it reduces a lot of coding that you might be doing if you were doing it in Java or C# or any other language. For example, if you have to find out if a passed in character is a vowel, you will have to write probably 10 statements, 10 switch cases, small a, small u, capital U, small o, capital O. You will have to write 10 statements. But switch in Swift makes it possible in just one line. It is capable of handling multiple conditions in a single switch case. We will be doing a lot about switch as we progress. But theoretically, you need to understand that switch is much more powerful than any other language that you have learned. This is what I was talking about memory variables. Let's stop here and let's move to Xcode now. We have a lot of theory done. I hope you have a good insight about what Swift is capable of. So let's go to Xcode. I will open Xcode application. Mine is 12.4. You might be running 13. It's okay. It should not give you much of a difference. So to begin learning Swift, we will not really create an Xcode project. We will first concentrate on just the language. Okay, only the language. So for that, I am going to actually do something like I'll go to File, New, and I will create a playground. Can you find this option? So go to File, New, and Playground. We will create a blank playground. We will play from the beginning. Blank playground. Say next, and it'll ask for a name. I already have multiple playgrounds, so I'm going to just replace the existing playground with it is named as my playground. I'll just use the same name. It will override the existing playground that I might be having because of my previous trainings. So I'll say create and I'll say replace. You might not get the option to replace. Okay. So right here, I have a playground which has a text. I hope you have something similar to this in your playground. So it's only for learning Swift that we will use playgrounds. After we learn Swift, we will move to Xcode and we will do actual UI designing and all that, the setup. Just the beginning stages, a couple of days we will be here in the playground. All right. So on the left-hand side, we have the source files. We have nothing in the source files because we have just one file for coding. You can see an import statement, which is importing the UI kit. UI kit is responsible for user interface. You see a line which says where str, hello playground. The central section is your coding section for the playground. Okay. The top bar here, the white bar that you see, is the status bar. It will tell you the status of your application. If it has any errors or any warnings or it is compiling or building or running, the status will come here. This right-hand side portion here, the gray area, will show you any output which is possible from the code that you type here. The bottom of the screen, you will see this show the debug area. Can you find this? Can you find this button? So show the debug area will show you the results of the code. And here we have this run button. There are two options in the run button. If you see, there's a small drop down here, execute playground. There's a small drop down, run automatically, run manually. Okay. So I'll set it to run automatically or manually as per your choice. That means if you say run automatically, every time you write a piece of code, the code will be executed. If you say run manually, it will wait for you to click the run button. Okay. So we have this line of code here, hello playground, and I'm trying to run this. Nothing is going to happen apart from the string being shown at the right hand side because we don't have an output command here. So hello playground is the name of the variable, the value of the variable. You can click on this I button to see the value, and you click on this, it will show it here. Now, people who are coming from the Kotlin background, you will be already aware of what var means. Var is a declaration where we declare a variable. str is the name of the variable, and hello playground is the value of the variable. First thing that you would like to notice about Swift is, in other languages, after you write a statement, you have to put a semicolon. Semicolon is optional in Swift unless you are writing more than one statement in a single line. If you're writing more than one statement in a single line, you will have to separate those statements using semicolon. But if you have a single line of statement in a single line, semicolon is optional. That is first thing that you learn about Swift. Then we will talk about comments. Comments. Comments are a way in which we express what we are intending to do as a developer, or mark something for another person to understand what is this variable or a method about. Single line comments are, as usual, double slash, and it is a single line comment. Multi-line comments are as usual slash, star, star, slash. And in between you can line multi-line comments. There is an additional star here. I can remove it. So star slash star star slash will give you multi-line comments. Okay. How do we print something? It's simple. Print is the statement, and you see multiple versions of print. We will talk about them as we proceed. So print in the simplest form can take anything. It can take a string, hello world, and it can also take variables like str. And now if I run this, since I have print statements, I should be getting two outputs here. As you can see, the print statement, it says hello world /n. It automatically appends a new line character to the print statement. So the lines will be printed in the next line itself. Let's talk about string interpolation. Let me create so here, if you see, I have used the word var. People from the web background would be very much comfortable with var because you are used to just declare the name of the variable and not define the type. I am not defining the type here. The type is inferred. Now, what type is str? On your keyboard, are you using Apple keyboard or Windows keyboard? Use the Alt option and hover your mouse over str. Can you see the question mark? Okay. When you see the question mark, click on it. Click on str. Can you see this dialog? Now, can you see this dialog? You can clearly see that it has already understood that str is a string. This is what I was talking about, type inference. Okay. This was type inference. As I can tell you again, I'll show you one more example. Var is a way to declare variables. Okay. Var is a way to declare variables. Variables are something that can be reassigned. Okay. I'm using the word reassigned. I'll come back to that later. Num1 equals 10. And if I now say alt and click, it has understood that this is an integer. Now, if I say 10.0 and I say alt click, it understands it's a double. This is called type inference. The system understands most of the time what type of variable is being declared. So var is a keyword to declare a variable. It is followed by the name of the variable equal to the value. Now, this is a typical of Swift. Notice this thing. I'm going to do a little change here. I'm deleting this space. Okay. Swift is going to cry. Look at what the stupid thing is crying about. It says you should have equal number of white spaces on both sides. So num1, there is a space equals, then I did not put a space. It started crying. Either I have to remove this space or I have to put a space on both the sides. It's typical of Swift, but these are minor issues that you might land in the beginning of your development. Now have a look at this very carefully. I say alt click is a double, right? It says var num1 colon double. You can do this yourself if you want to be very specific in declaring the data type. This is how you actually do it. Var num1 colon data type. So I'll say num1 colon double. Now I have explicitly declared that num1 is double. Again, here also I can say string of type string. Certain cases you have to be very particular in stating what type of data it is. Double is 16-bit data. If you want less precision, or if you are not worried about precision and you want to store data in float. Please make a note somewhere. All iOS operating systems, including phones and desktops, all the operating systems, they are 64-bit operating systems. Okay, they are all 64-bit operating systems. So double is 32-bit, float is 16-bit. Now, if I say var num2 equals 3.142, I am not really worried about the precision. It is a pi basically, but it will be taken as double. In case you want to actually not interested in, or there is a requirement that you don't want it to be a double, you can explicitly say float. Sometimes you have to be explicit. Now here's one more thing that you should always remember. Var integer equals 1. Now 1 is an integer. If you see alt click, it is an integer. Okay, now I'm going to try to do something like this. Var sum equals integer plus num1. See the error. That level of security has been added. The developer has to be instinctive. The developer has to be informed that I am aware of what I'm doing. So I'm adding an integer with a double. Now it's your choice whether you want to convert integer to double or you want to convert double to integer. What is the precision level that you need? Num1 is a double. Integer is an int. Now you have to decide what should be the result. You want an integer or you want a double. You cannot have an operation on two different types of variables. So let me change this into integer. I'll say int of num1. And I will run this by printing the sum, print sum, and the answer is 11. Now I can change this to 10.8 and see. Now still the answer is 11 because I've casted it to an integer. You cannot operate on two different data types. Please make a note. Operations of two different data types are not possible in Swift. You will have to cast one such that both the operands are of the same data type. Let me talk about string interpolation. Here I am printing sum, which is 11. If I want to print in such a way that I can print it in a text format, I can say print, I'll put quotes, sum is, and when I have to place a value, the actual value of the variable, I'll have to use slash, brackets, and the name of the variable. This is how you interpolate strings in printing. Now, if I run it, sum is 11. This is string interpolation. You can add multiple statements here. For example, print sum of num1 and integer is sum. Now we have used the term var num as a double or something. Now I said where, when you use the term var, it is reassignable. I can say num1 equals 12.9. It is reassignable. Okay, all these variables that you are creating, these are all value types. That means they go into stack. Okay, all these variables are value types. They go into stack. They can be reassigned. So basically, num1 10.8 when you did, and then you said num1 12.9. A new memory location was created. This value was assigned to num1. Okay, this value was assigned to num1. Variables can be reassigned. I'm using the term reassigned very specifically. If you want to create constants,
Hello everyone. Intellipaat has an iOS development training course where you will get trained by industry experts. In this course, you will learn all the important concepts such as iOS architecture, iOS SDK, Objective-C, core data services, testing, and many more. Reach out to us if you are interested in knowing more details about our program.
okay, if you want to create constants, then you have to use the term let. Let number equals 10. Now, if I try to say number equals 12, you will have a compiler error. You cannot reassign let constants. Now, this is deep, actually very deep, and I'll explain you about let constants when we talk about classes. Okay, we will revisit let when we talk about classes. This is quite deep for you to understand. But one thing that you have to remember is let constants cannot be reassigned. So once a let constant is assigned a value, you cannot reassign another value to it. It is a constant. There is no other term in Swift. There are only two terms. One is var, one is let. Var is variable. You can reassign and reallocate the new value. Let, you cannot do that. There's one more thing that you should know. I have an integer 1 here. Okay, I can say integer equals 10. It was 1. I say 10. But if I say 10.9, an error. So third thing that you should remember is you cannot change the data type. People who are coming from the web background, especially JavaScript, you can create a variable of type integer and you can assign a string at the later part of your program. It is not possible in Swift. So third rule, you cannot reassign a different data type to a variable. I hope you are noting these down, right? All right. Now, something which is different from other languages, when you want to assign a character like A, E, O, U, W, like vowels or consonants or something, in other languages, you would generally do is var vowel equals A, right? So here it's complaining single quoted string literal found. In other languages, this is the way that we do it. Characters are in single quotes, strings are in double quotes. Am I right? But in Swift, whether you have a character or you have a string, single quotes does not work. You have to put it in double quotes only. There's no choice. But then if I alt click on vowel, it's a string. I actually wanted it to be a character. This is not a character. So in these cases, in certain cases, like I mentioned, like we did float, you have to be specifically assigning the data type. Now, vowel is a character. All right, next step. You can have multiple declarations in a single line, multiple declarations in a single line. For example, I can say var x equals 0, y equals 1, z equals 2. You can do that. But when you are doing multiple declarations in the same line, all the variables should be of the same type, or probably not. Okay, that has been changed. We can declare multiple variables in the same line. We can also have declarations like this: var red, green, blue is of type double. So all three are of type double. Now, there are certain built-in functions for these classes. For example, I can say int dot max, and I can say print double dot, no, I don't have it for double, int 64 dot max. Let's try this out. They are built in. You might notice both the numbers are same. So whether I take integer or I take integer 64. Since I said already earlier, all the iOS operating systems are 64-bit operating systems. So all the integers will take 4 bytes, and that's the size of a 4-byte integer, right? So these are the basic data types that we have in our system. Then you can try basic operators. One very important thing that you have to remember: Swift does not have plus plus operator or minus minus operator. Like we say integer plus plus. No, you can't do that. There is no operator called plus plus or minus minus. So prefix and postfix, that these are absent in Swift. You have to do it composite, or you have to do it like a normal value. You can say plus equals 1, something like that you can do. But plus plus is missing. Any questions? No. Okay. So to this part, when you're doing Swift programming, you would find it easy if you have done Kotlin, because it has a lot of similarity. If you see the videos from the Kotlin web series, they themselves have said that they have taken a lot from Swift. Swift was developed before Kotlin, and the Kotlin has taken a lot from Swift, learned a lot from Swift, like optionals, null pointer exceptions. They have learned a lot from Swift, and they have implemented that in Kotlin. So they are kind of 80% similar to each other. People who are from web may find it a little different from the way that you use JavaScript. But I will be taking you slowly as I can, and introduce new topics as we proceed. Okay, let's talk about strings and characters. You all know string is a set of characters, the series of characters, and character is a single Unicode compliant character, which can be represented as a single alphabetical character or Unicode characters. You can create strings using constants, variables, literals, expressions, like we did yesterday. We did first name and last name concatenation. So strings basically they are a set of characters, a series of characters, and they are closely binded to Objective-C strings, which were called NS strings. So there's a bridge which has been created between the NS string from Objective-C and the string that comes from Swift. The difference here is NS string in Objective-C was reference type, and an string in Swift is a value type. So string will no longer go into a heap, it will stick into the stack. Whereas if you use the bridging string, that is NS string, NS means next step. Next step was the company which was taken over by Apple, take their framework. So everything in next step was named with these two initial characters, NS. So there are NS strings, NS numbers, NS array, all are next step. And Swift bridges this gap so that people who are probably using an old code which has Objective-C and they are now moving to Swift, they can reuse the old code, that is Objective-C code, and they can still continue to start developing their further functionalities using string. Let's talk about string literals. String literals are like a way to create a string directly using quotation marks. So I can say var name equals Alex. This is a literal. Literal strings are something that we can create on the fly. If you want to create an empty string and then reassign it to something, you can say var, let's say education equals, this is an empty string literal. Okay, it's an empty string literal. You can reassign it to a value when you actually get the value. Like Kotlin, Swift also has multi-line string literals. When we talk about multi-line string literal, that means that I can create formatted strings. For example, I'm writing a piece of code that should be presented exactly as I type. So I can create a multi-line string literal, a sequence of characters surrounded by 3 quotes. Okay, multi-line string, set of characters surrounded by 3 quotes. For example, let me say let program equals, I can create a string using 3 quotes. I'm adding a tab here. This is a program. This string is multi-line, and here is the code. And then I can close it with 3 quotes. And when I print this program variable, okay, I have a spelling mistake. Program, and here should be program. And when I execute this statement, you will see that the string will be printed exactly how I type, with tabs, with spaces. So this is useful when you are writing some kind of a page in which you want to show formatting and you want to show how the program exactly looks like when you were or you gonna type it. So this is a multi-line string. It can include all the lines between the only opening and closing brackets. And when you see open the first quotation mark, it ends with the closing quotation marks. And all of the data that is in between will be inside that quote. So source code will include line breaks. It will include the break that will appear on as you print. It will include spaces. It will include tabs. It will include backslashes, everything. Yeah. So these are a multi-line strings. We can also have Unicode strings, which are represented with the Unicode language. For instance, I can say let dollar equals. So the symbol for dollar actually is, I can show it as /U Unicode, and the value for a dollar is 24. So these things you might have to probably search on the net to exactly check what is the value that you're trying to put. What's this? Hexadecimal in braces. It is an hexadecimal in braces. Why is that complaining? It's Unicode. It has to be U. Print dollar. It prints 24. It doesn't print Unicode. See? So it has to be U here. For some reason, maybe the version is not taking it. Why is that so? Do I have to escape it? No, it just still sees U. It's not escaping the character. It should print dollar. Okay. I'll get back to you on this. All right. Okay. Yes. I think you're right. It should be curly braces here and the escape. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. I was missing something here. Okay, so these are Unicode characters that you can put, and we also talked about characters where you have to specifically say that it's a character. So let's see, I can actually run loops over here. We have not done loops yet, so we will do that as we move further. We have done string concatenation. Yeah, yesterday we did string concatenation by adding and we have done string interpolation in the print statement where we can create strings by adding values. For example, I can say var statement equals, and I can create a string interpolated by saying the dollar sign is, we can interpolate it with the value. So I will say print statement. This is string interpolation. You can use it in print. You can create variables like that, and that should work perfectly fine. Okay. In other languages that you have used earlier, probably like Java or something, a string is basically a set of characters, and you can run a loop over it to read each character. We will do that once we learn the loops. But there is something known as a subscript for a string, right? and the subscript is basically like accessing the index of the string. Yeah, so we call that as a subscript. As a subscript operation works in multiple different ways. So let's say, for example, I have let message equals, I'll say hello world is my string, and I actually want to get say the first value. So I can kind of say print message dot. I have some methods like lowercase, uppercase, appending format. But what I'm currently talking about is index, the start index. So let's see what the start index will give us. It says the start index is a raw bit 1. So it's trying to say that the start index of that variable is actually 1. But if I want to actually get the value of this object, so I can say greet message, and from the message, I want message dot start index. So it's going to print out the actual character which is there in the string. So this is subscripting, in which you can find out which index or which value do you want. You can actually run loops over it. We'll do that in a later part of the session today. And we also have something known as end index. So I can say print from the message. I can say message dot last. No match for the subscript. It should be message dot last index. It's not giving me message dot last index. It's taking a weird parameter there. Oh no, that's not should be there. Last index is not there. Message dot last index. No. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's print message dot end index. So last index, it is end index. I work on multiple languages. What's that? Last index -1. No, cannot convert expected index, but getting an integer. Last index will be beyond the range. You understand that? We start with 0. The index starts with 0, and the end index would be 1 more than the last index. So it's throwing me an exception. Attempting to access the index which is beyond the part of the index would throw an error. So we don't have an index here. Probably we can use it for insertion. I can actually say let. I'll change it to where. So it is changed. Message dot, let's say I'll say insert new character. I'll use, let's say, exclamation. And which index? I will say message dot end index. Now let's see if I can actually insert a variable there. It is giving no error. And on the right hand side, we have hello world with exclamation. So remember, end index is basically going out of the range when we are trying to print it. But when you're trying to insert it, we are at the end of the string, and we are able to do that. I'll modify this string a bit. I'll say hello, comma, world. I'll explain you collections, and then after you have seen collections, we will talk about loops. I'm gonna get rid of all of this. You can keep it in your system if you want. I'm gonna just let this go. Okay, so collections. Collections are basically set of objects. They can be arrays, they can be sets, they can be dictionaries. From Java, you might have heard about hash maps. Hash maps are dictionaries. So we can have any type of collection in Swift also. Arrays, 6 dictionaries are all they are like types of values, or they may have key value pairs that they store. They are also value types. That means they will be stored in the stack. Trying to insert, like you have seen already with string, trying to insert in a wrong place might end up in an exception. So you have to be very confident where you are trying to put the data into the system. Now, if you create an array or set or a dictionary and you assign it to a variable, these values, if you create a variable, the values are mutable. You can mutate them. In Objective-C, we had two different types of collections. One were non-mutable collections. That means once they are created, they cannot be modified. And then we had mutable collections. For example, we had NS array and we had NS mutable array. So you would be knowing beforehand, you would be deciding beforehand whether you would be able to mutate it, modify it, or it would be a constant. In Swift, we will decide that by using the keywords var and let, because they are value types. So adding, removing, modifying, deleting would be possible if you create a var. But if you create a let constant, you would not be able to do it. Similar to strings, arrays are bridged to Objective-C NS array. NS array is an array of any type of data sets, and we can create different types of arrays. Let's start with a basic array of integers. So to create an empty array, create an empty array. We can simply say, for example, let's say var some numbers is of type. The way that we define arrays is by enclosing them in square brackets. And we define the type. So I say int, and I can say it is empty. So this is an empty array that I have created. It is of type integer, and I can kind of add items to it. So let's say some numbers dot, I have options called append. I can append content of. The difference between these two methods, append, is you are appending an element. For example, I say append 10. It's an integer. 10 will be appended to the some numbers variable. If I say some numbers dot append content of, content of means I can append an entirely different array to my existing array. So I have two arrays and I want to join them or concatenate them. I can use append the content of, and you can add a set of array to another array. Okay. And then there are other possibilities. I can say print, let's say number of items in array is, I'll say how many? I'll say some numbers dot count. Okay, you might be seeing here two properties. One is capacity and one is count. The two look so similar to each other that capacity means how many variables, how many elements are there, and count means again how many elements are there. So the difference is with arrays, you can define a capacity. When you create an array, you can define a capacity that this array can hold a maximum of, let's say, 10 numbers. And count means the actual number of items in the array. Okay. So capacity means how many elements the array can hold if you have defined the capacity. Else, count means how many elements are existing in the array right now. Okay. So I'll use count, and this point of time, it should be 1. We have a number of items in the array as 1. We can create variable arrays by some built-in methods also. For example, I want to create a variable, an array with some predefined values. I can simply do that by saying var values equals an array. This is an array literal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is an array of integers. If you alt click on values, you will be able to see it is an array of integers. I have not declared it, but I can already, the system is inferring that it's an integer array. If you want to manually state it, you can say of type integer and provide the values. Similar to strings, we again have a value. We have already used the property called count. So you can use the property called count to print the array. I can also modify, because since it's a variable, I can modify the variable and say values dot I have append of. That means I can add another entire array to it. I'll say append 6, and I'll say print values using values dot end index. So last item, I have a bad instruction. Is going out of bounds. It's going out of bounds. How do I get the end index values? Let me just try. What is it exactly expecting? Values, print values. What is the expectation here? Let me say 5. Does it take it? Var index equals values dot end index is an integer -1 index. Again, bad instructions. Why? What has changed? The process has been left at the point where it was interrupted. Use thread return -x. I'm doing -x to return the state of the before evaluating expression. Values dot returns the position immediately before the given index. Before values dot end index. Is that going to help? No, it's not. So indices have changed. I'll have a look into indices and see where we have changed over the last release. Okay, so we'll talk about indices later. So start index and end index are the positions of the array where you can insert it in any other position also. You can actually give a number here, but that should be within the range of the array. If you go out of the bounds of the array, then you will have a problem, right? Okay, we'll talk about arrays a little more when we work on the loops. Now I'm going to introduce you to another type of data, which is called sets. What are sets? Anybody can tell me what are sets? It's a mathematical container to hold objects. Let me just show you something here. I have 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to print the values after appending these values. I'm going to print them again, right? So I have the set of values, the array, which has all the numbers which were initially put into the array, plus the one which was appended and the one which was inserted. Now I'm going to actually create a set. A set cannot be created without mentioning the type. So I'll have to say var. Let's say num set is a set of type integer equals 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to just print num set. Can you see the set? What do you observe here? Only the unique numbers are present. Yes? So that is a set. A set is a set of values which unique numbers. If you try to duplicate the values will be ignored. And notice, in the array, you have a sequence, and the sequence has been maintained. Whereas in a set, the sequence has not been maintained. I'll add 5, I'll add 6, and try this. So you can see there is no particular sequence in the numbers when we're talking about sets. They are not ordered. Arrays are indexed and ordered pieces of values, whereas set are unique values. Okay? I want to give you a small exercise. You can do it now or you can do it whenever you find time. I want you to create an array like this, okay? An array like this, which has duplicate values. And I want you to eliminate the duplicate values. One solution is by checking the values one by one. Another solution is by creating a set out of array and recreating the array out of the set. The second solution is easier. Whenever you find time, try to do that. Make a note of this task. Array with duplicate values, convert it to set so that you have unique values, and then reconvert it or reassign it to the array which had duplicate values. So I have unique values in the array. Would you be able to try that? So what I'm saying is, if you see here, there's an array called values, and it has duplicate.
Hello everyone. Intellipaat has an iOS development training course where you will get trained by industry experts. In this course, you will learn all the important concepts such as iOS architecture, iOS SDK, Objective-C, core data services, testing, and many more. Reach out to us if you are interested in knowing more details about our program.
Values 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 1 2 3. It has duplicate values. Yeah, but if you see set, even if there are duplicate values in the set, the duplicate values are eliminated. So the requirement of my program is, if in an array there are duplicate values, the values which are duplicate need to be eliminated. So you can probably try to convert an array into a set and then convert it back into an array so that the duplicate values are eliminated. Is the question clear? Okay. So we talked about array strings. We talked about arrays. We talked about sets. So there is another component which is called dictionaries. In other languages, you probably have heard it as hash maps. Hash maps are basically a set of key value pairs in which there is a key and a value, and you can iterate. You can get the values for using the keys from the dictionary or from the hash map. Dictionaries are a set of key value pairs in which you can store some keys which will have some corresponding values. Again, like set, dictionaries are unordered. They don't go in any specific order. They are just keys and values. They don't respect the sequence in which you create the keys. Dictionaries, they follow a protocol which is called hashable. They have to conform to this protocol. We'll talk about protocols in detail, very detailed in the later stage. Basically, protocols are a set of rules that we define. And again, dictionaries are like strings and arrays. They are bridged to Objective-C NS dictionary, next step dictionary. So let's create a dictionary with some values. So I'll say var, let's say, what do we use? Let's say months. And I can create a dictionary directly by saying the months. Let's say I can create, like, first month is Jan, and the second month is Feb, third month is March. That's a dictionary, and I can print it, print months. And if you see the output of this dictionary, you can see there is no specific order in which the dictionary is displayed. We are displaying it as 2, 3, 1, whereas we entered 1, 2, 3. There are certain operations on the dictionary that you can perform, like months dot capacity. As I said, they can be a capacity, they can be a count. We have indexes. I can actually say update. So update is a method that is used to either modify an existing value in the dictionary or add a new value to the dictionary. So it says value and key. See, the value is Jan, Feb, March, April, and the key is 4. I can update it, and I can also update the existing values. Months dot update, let's say MAR for value 3. So instead of March, I'm changing the value to 3. The dictionary does not have a value for 4, the key 4. So it would be actually appended. But since the key 3 already exists, it will be updated. So I can print this to show you that. Print months again. And you can see as printed March has been modified to MAR, and 4 April has been added. You can remove the keys and values, months, dot, remove all, remove act is a little complicated because you don't know the index. So that would be that probably will not be your expected behavior, but we can remove for a particular key, remove, let's say I'll remove the value for key 4 and I'll print it again. So the 4th value that was added would be deleted. So April will be gone. See, every time I print, the sequence is changing. So there's no absolute sequence which is defined for sets or dictionaries. You can be really specific about declaring a dictionary. You can say, my dictionary is gonna be of type int and string. It can be real specific. Sorry, this is int colon string. So int is the key and the string is the value. Again, dictionaries are value types. So if you create a let constant, it would not be accessible or modifiable. Yeah. You can check if the variable that you have created is empty. To declare an empty dictionary in case you are not aware of what are the values in the beginning, and probably you will be getting the keys and values from, let's say, a database or an API call. You can declare an empty dictionary where empty dict is of type, let's say, is of type string, and you can create an empty dictionary by simply saying this is an empty dictionary. And then you can append, update values, remove values, and perform operations. You can also access dictionaries using subscripts. So I can say print months with a key call, let's say 2, because it's an integer. I can set this as key. Is giving me an error, a warning that the expression implicitly coerces to string question mark to any. I'll explain you this in a bit. But here is trying to say that the value for the key 2 may or may not exist. It can be null. So if I try to print it, you will see something. You see this optionals fib. Okay, why is it optional fib, not just fib? We know that there is a key, but the system does not know. Just not keeping track of your dictionary. It may or may not exist. The key 2 may or may not exist. All right. Now, if you remember my presentation, I'll pull it up and bring that out. We had talked about optionals. Optionals are values that may or may not exist. So you have to make sure that the value is existing. And if you try to access a value which does not exist or is not being initialized, you will have a null pointer exception. And Swift very nicely takes care of null pointer exceptions. To begin with, as an introduction to optionals, here the problem here is that the string is optional. The keyword question mark defines that it is optional. And when you say it's optional, the value may not exist. So while printing or while accessing the value, the system will say it's optional, right? Let's try to access a value which does not exist. 9. 9 is a value which does not exist. So the value here is nil. There's no value with the key associated as 9. But for 2, there is a value which is an optional string called fib. Now, as a beginner, to begin understanding optionals, You might have done this in Kotlin. If you want to coerce this string and make sure that it is a string, right? There are different ways of doing this. The simplest way of doing this is you can put a force unwrap. You can put an exclamation to the variable. Now, this is at the risk of the developer. You should be well aware when to use an exclamation and when to not. You can use a nil coercing expression where I can say if the value does not exist, just print NA, not available. Okay, this cannot use optional chaining. So, okay, this is not what I can do. Question mark. No, it's not there. So you can do an optional, you can do a force unboxing. So the values which are there with question marks, they are optional values. It is trying to tell you the value may or may not exist. And with the risk that you will take here, if the value exists, you see now I am trying to print the value 2 is currently saying optional. I print it, it will be printing the exact value fib. The optional keyword is gone. However, if I try to print a value which does not exist, you are inviting trouble. There's a crash. There is a crash. And the crash is saying that it found nil while unwrapping an optional value. When I was trying to do it without the exclamation, it was just printing nil. So it's up to you to check whether the value exists or not. If the value does not exist and you put an exclamation, you are inviting a crash. Otherwise, it will simply say it's nil. You'll have to check it for the value, and the value will be nil. As you can see now, the value is nil. Now, an interesting aspect of Swift. Now, an interesting feature of Swift is something which is coming from Objective-C. It's again a bridge from Objective-C. You might have seen here string to any. See, string to any. So this is a powerful feature of Swift in which I say var, I think values is already there. Any values is equal to, I can say 1, 2, hello, 19.0. So we have different types of values in here. So it says it's a heterogeneous collection. Since it's a heterogeneous collection, generally arrays are homogeneous set of values. But Swift and Objective-C do allow heterogeneous collections. And if you have a need where the values can be multiple types of different types, you will have to define it explicitly. You have to say it's an array of type any. And now this is gonna behave without any problems. So any is basically, it can be anything. It can be integer, float, class, it can be a struct, it can be anything, whatever types we have available here. This if let we will discuss about error handling. If let is a way to handle errors and to handle availability of value where the value might be nil. We'll talk about this part in a bit. We'll talk about this. Yeah, we'll talk about this. Well, I'll tell you how if let works. Right, so we have any data type. This is coming from Objective-C, where we had heterogeneous collection of data, right? Okay, so that is about arrays, sets, and dictionaries. We have set operations, but I think practically in the real world, we are not really used to using set operations. If you have any requirement of operating on sets, you can check the documentation at swift.org. You will find some values where you will find some document about having the document that we where it discusses about set operations. Yeah. Okay. Condition loops. Okay, loops. We have different types of loops in Swift, like other languages. So let's say first type of thing that we have is we already have an array here. We have an array of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, something. We have this array of numbers. We have array of dictionaries, and we'll see how to iterate over arrays and dictionaries using the loops. So most common form of loop that we will use is while iterating over dictionaries, yeah, or arrays. So I can actually use for val in values. This is a for each loop in other languages. It's giving an error that when you open a loop, you have to open braces. Now, this is a rule in Swift. In other languages like Java, if you have a if condition or a for loop, which is followed by a single statement, you can kind of, you are allowed to ignore the curly braces. But as an exception in iOS, whether you have a single line of code after if condition or a for loop, or you have multi lines, you must put brackets. Yeah? So here's a for loop which says for val is values. Val is a constant, and it will be of type integer. It's a type integer. It's a let constant, as you can see. Whenever you do something in a for loop, you cannot modify the values here. It's a let constant. So the value that is coming from the values is going to be a constant here. And I can say print value is, I'll say val. Okay. Just going to print out one by one all the values in the values array. And here we have it. So this is the for each loop kind of a thing that we use, where I can have a variable which is representing an individual element of values. Now, if you have a dictionary and you want to work over a dictionary, you can, I have already given you an example where you can access the values using the keys. You can print, you can remove, you can update. But if you want to run over a dictionary, this is the first time I will be introducing tuples to you. I'll say for index and value in months. Sorry, not index. It's actually key and value in months. The name can be anything. It is immaterial. I am creating a tuple here. A tuple has a value. It has a key. It has some name of the variable, key and value. So it will iterate over the dictionary called months, and it will extract the key and value. And I can say print value for key is value. So you can see the value for 1 is Jan, 2 is Feb, 3 is March. So this is a tuple that I have used. You can use this for strings also. For example, where name is Josephine, I can try to iterate over that for char in name dot. There should be a property called characters. Or is it char in this directly? Can I print that? Print char. Okay, I can do that. So to run runtimes, and we have this Josephine, right? Now here, if you see the Josephine, the name has been printed in a multi-line because this loop will run with a /n at the end. The print statement runs with /n at the end, but we have another version of print, and we have print with terminator, print, the separator, the terminator. Okay, so I can say print char. What is a separator? What separates the each individual? I'll say nothing. And the terminator by default is /n, which will take you to the new line. But here I'll give the terminator as empty, an empty string. So this should print in the single line, the whole name Josephine. Yeah. And if I put a separator here, for example, I put an exclamation mark. So after every character, you will have an exclamation mark. Okay? No? Why? Why it's not taking the separator? Separator, textual representation of each item may not be in by the string. The following example prints a string close range. Where is the separator? A string to print between each item. The default is a single space, but I am giving a separator as something else. Right? No, not convert what? Integer to type string. And I am giving number. Okay. As per the documentation here, if you see here, a string to print between each item, the default is a single space. But I am putting a separator and not picking up for some reason. Okay, I put a space here. No, it's not. There's something wrong. Let me check on that. I'll update you on this, right? Okay, so this is the for each loop which iterates over values, and you can iterate over arrays, dictionaries, sets, collections, anything, right? Now we have arrays of a different type also, in which you can run the array for a specific number of characters or a specific number of values or a specific number of times. And for this, we use something known as a range operator. A range operator defines a range which will tell the start and end of a flow, right? For example, I can say for index in 1, look at that, 3 dots and 5. So I'm running a loop from 1 to 5, and I'll print index, and it should give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The separator won't work when you are printing single elements. Fine. Yeah, that would be great. So I'll just print a new line, just print something. So it will give me a new line for Josephine and 1, 2, 3, 4. So here, this is called the range operator, right? When you put these 3 dots and then the number, right? It will be inclusive. Starts from 1, ends with 5. But if you are not interested in the last value, you can remove the last dot and put a less than symbol. Now in this case, 5 will be excluded, right? So range operator has inclusive and exclusive. If you want to use, like if you are from Java, you will say for I equal to 0, I less than equal to 5, or you can say less than 5. So the 3 dot means less than equal to, and less than means it would exclude 5. Now, please note one very important thing. This loop that we are using for index in 1 to 5, it's always a forward loop, okay? It runs from lower end to the higher end. You cannot have the starting point smaller than the ending point. So this is not going to work because your start index is bigger than the end index, right? We have a problem here, and you can see very clearly cannot from range where upper bound is less than the lower bound. So make a note of this somewhere. This is not a reverse loop. You cannot have a reverse loop in Swift. There is another way of doing it, but not with this loop. And second thing that you have to note, please note somewhere, you cannot add steps to this loop. You cannot say it will run from 1 to 5 with a step of 1. You cannot change the number of steps. You cannot say 1, 3, 5. No, you cannot do that. It will run from 1, it will run to 5 with all the values in between. So two things. One is the lower range should be bigger than, smaller than the higher range, and you cannot change the steps. Guys, any questions in for each and the for loop that we just showed here, the range operator? Any questions here? Here I have used the tuple, and here I've used the value. I can actually do that actually enumerated, and here I can actually do index and value because it is enumerated. Now I can print the index as well as value. So value is value at index. So now I'll be able to print both the value and the index. So tuples are quite handy. I'll run it till here only. So you have the values 1, 2, 3, and you have the indices. Values dot enumerated dot sorted. We will work on the sorted later. Are we clear about the loop here and the tuples? But do you have a basic idea of what a tuple is? It's a set of values, basically a set of values. All good? Let's look at another type of array, which will allow you to add steps and add reverse arrays. We call this as, we'll do that this way. We'll say for, let's say for index in, we'll use the word stride. So there are two methods on stride: from, to, by, and from, through, by. We'll have a look at them one by one: from, to, and by. So from is what is the point at which you want to start the loop. Let's say 1. 2 is till how long do you want to go with this loop. I'll say 10. I want to go till 10. And by what value do you want this loop to increment or decrement? So I'll say 2. And with this loop, I'm gonna print the value index, and I'll put a print here for a new line, print empty space. So we have a new line before this loop runs. And what we get here is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. We are starting with 1, we're going up to 10, and we have a step of 2. I'll start with 0 and look at it. So it is 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. This is how we use a stride or a stride array. I'm sorry, a stride loop to run over values with some steps. There's another form of it for index in stride and use through. I'll use the same values and I'll print again, print index, separator, and I'll put that print here so we have a gap, and I'll run this particular code. Okay, so you have 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So who can tell me what's the difference between the from, to, by and from, through, by? So 2 means I want to run it to that point, but not including the value, which is at the end. So it's like less than 10. 2 means less than the end value. And through means it has to run through is less than equal to the end value. And then we can have a reverse loop also here. So I will again print an empty space for index in stride. I'll say through, and I'll start from 10. I'll go to 0, and I'll decrement it by -2. So that is the integer, a positive or a negative value, which can be used. And then let me print index. You might have already noticed that in each of the array loops, I'm using the same keyword index. This is a let constant. It is the scope of this variable is only within the loop, and that is why I can reuse that variable in different arrays. After the end of the array, the index is deallocated from memory, so it's not gonna be the same. These 3 indexes are 3 different variables which are allocated for each loop. And let's see how it behaves. So I have these numbers running in reverse now. But I'll put a space at the terminator so you can see the values as a separate integers. All right, so I'll give you a small task. I want you to use any loop, whether you use the range operator or you use the stride. I want you to print this loop. Can you try and print this out? It should be the output of your loops. Can you try?
Hello everyone. Intellipaat has an iOS development training course where you will get trained by industry experts. In this course, you will learn all the important concepts such as iOS architecture, iOS SDK, Objective-C, core data services, testing, and many more. Reach out to us if you are interested in knowing more details about our program.
Please try and let's see how you have understood this usage of loops now. I don't think this is going to work. See, your output is different than expected. Did you see that? This is not what I'm expecting. I'm expecting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. Your output is different. You're trying to print a string. You should be printing a number. That works. But you printed it in reverse, Matthew. I wanted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 1. Your printed is as 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The expected result is this. This is what I'm expecting. You have to modify a loop. We have to modify the loop a little bit from the second internal loop. So you have this nested loop. The internal loop you have to modify a bit. You are running in the reverse direction that is expected. And if you see, the expected result is the reverse of what you are giving. 1 to I. This one should work. This one might work, I guess. Okay, that works. I didn't get it. Copy and check. Fine, but instead of using nested loops, you have used an array and you're deleting the object at the index in order to print it. It's okay, but my expectation was something like this. Your output looks good, but not as what I expected. And it's run through 4. And how you're printing 5? Or 0 to 4 index. Okay, all right. You're only on the index. Okay. There are different ways of solving the same problem. It depends on you how you have your programming concepts clarified and how you actually use them. So I'll wait for another 5 minutes for anyone else to give up something that is interesting or is different from what we have here. Right? That looks good. 1 through 5. From 1 through I by 1. And at the end, you're saying I is less than 1. That should also work. That works fine. Strike 5 to minus 1. So 5 minus 1. Okay, you're going through 0 to from 5 to minus 1. And from 5, you're printing 1 through the index by 1. Okay, that also looks good. Alex 5 through 1 minus 1, same logic. Stride 1 by 1. Okay, all right, fine. Looks good. Let's go to the next loop, which is the while loop. Anybody who can tell me what is the difference between a pre-check loop and a post-check loop? Have you heard these terms, pre-check and post-check? Pre-check means it will first check the condition and then execute the loop. And post-check means it will execute at least once before checking the condition, and maybe it may or may not reiterate, right? So we have 2 loops here in IL Swift. One is the while loop and one is repeat while loop. So let's try those. So we have a while loop and it takes a condition. Now, as compared to Java, when you're putting conditions, it is not mandatory to put the conditions inside brackets. You can just put simple conditions. Let's say, for example, I say var I equals 1, and I can say I is less than equals 5, and I can print I. If you have not discovered it yet, when you are typing a value in a method, the print method, and you are typing a value and you have a placeholder highlighted. Yeah, your placeholder highlighted. You can move from one placeholder to another by using the tab key on your keyboard. So separator is this and terminator is a space. I'm trying to print this. Why is it giving me an error on invalid redeclaration of I? Well, I have this I from some code that was given to me. Okay, I'll put it as Q. And this loop will run ambiguous. Okay, yeah, there were two declarations, so now it's fine. So now I am trying to print from 1 to 5. This is a while loop. As it enters the loop, it will check for the value of I. Oh my God. Can somebody tell me what's happening here? Yeah, we are in an infinite loop because we started printing Q, and Q is less than 5, and we never changed the value of Q. So it has entered into an infinite loop. So it's important that we change the value of loop towards the condition. So my Q is 1, and I'm going to stop this operation first. The Q is 1, and it is moving towards 5. So I have to increment the Q. So I'll use the combination operator, Q plus equals 5. Oh, sorry, 1. You can also use Q equals Q plus 1 if that is your comfort. But you can use a combined operator like this. And now my loop should run only 5 times instead of ending it into an infinite loop. It's taking a lot of time rerunning it. Oh, it has taken so much time, so probably it crashed because of infinite loop. Oh, let me kill the Xcode and restart it again. Force quit, Xcode kill, and I'll start Xcode again. Let's try it one more time. Right, it's printing zeros. Q is actually equal to 1, but it's printing zeros. Oh, yes. Okay. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Now, this loop, the while loop, is a pre-check loop. Before entering into the loop, it will first check the condition. If the condition is satisfied, only then it enters the loop. If I change this value to 6, this loop will never run. Yeah, so that loop never ran because Q is 6. It enters into the loop while Q is less than equal to 5. The condition is not satisfied. It exits the loop. Okay. The reverse of this is a post-check loop, and that post-check loop is repeat, and it has a condition in the end. The while is in the end, and let's say I'll use the same value Q because Q is being incremental. Let me create a new variable var pre equals 1, and the condition would be 1 is less than equals 5, and inside that I'll do a print. Before that, let me print an empty line here and print pre separator nothing tab space. So this is a post check loop, and I'll show you the difference in a bit. So it also prints 1 2 3 4 5. Oh, I again forgot to put the incremental operator there. So pre plus equals 1. So I have 1 2 3 4. Oh, oops. Oh, my condition. Look at the condition. 1 is less than 5. It's again entering into a infinite loop. It should be pre less than equal to 5, and I'll try it again one more time. So I have 2 times 1 2 3 4 5 from the while loop, and another 1 2 3 4 5 from the repeat while loop. Now this is a post check. That means here, if you see, I am gonna do pre as 6. 6 is less than equal to 5 is not the right condition, but since it is post check, it will check after completing the first run. It still prints 6. 6 is out of the condition. It is not even matching the condition, but it still prints 6. So this is post check. You can use this kind of a loop when you're probably trying to say doing a login, and you're trying to check if it is the first attempt, then do it. Whereas if you're a new customer, you want to try and set up the account for the first time, You can check the condition there. So pre-check will execute at least once before even checking the condition. It will execute at least once. So if that is your requirement, you will use repeat while. So are we clear about what's the difference between pre-check and post-check? Now, probably you can try this solution that you did here, or printing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, using while loop as well, where you can have nested while loops. You can try that in some free time. I'm not going to put you on that task right now, but you can try using a while loop, this solution that you did here, using your strides or your loops or whatever you have done with the for loop. All these solutions are working fine. You can try that with while and repeat while as well. It was easy, right? We have you have been using this while, and in other languages, probably Java, it is called the do while. Here we call it as repeat while. So that's the only difference. Otherwise, these loops are same as Java or Kotlin. So in a free time, try to get the same solution that we did here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and these. This output, try to get it using the while loop or repeat while, whichever you find comfortable or suitable for the solution. And okay, this is about the loops that we have in Swift. The other different types of loops that we have. Now we are actually going to start with the conditional operations, which is if and switch. So I'll just remove all this code. I think you have this code with you right now already. So I'll just let this go away and we'll talk about conditional operators. So we have if conditions in Swift, like any other language. It has a couple of rules that we have to follow. So it's as normal as any other if condition. It will be if, and see here, it gives you some intelligence. It has if statement and its condition. Like I said, with the while loop also, it is not mandatory to include the condition in brackets. You can have a simple condition. So let's say I have let value equals 1, and I'll take a condition. I'll say if value is less than 5, print the value. And this is a very simple if condition. It will just print the value because the value is 1, and it would fail if it is not less than 5, so nothing would be printed. And you can add else block to the if condition by simply saying else, or you can say else if you are multiple parameters or multiple conditions. I'll say else print value out of range. So I did not close the bracket quotes. Top level statement can begin with closure expression. Where is the closure expression? Value out of range. So this is how we have if and else if and if. You can also have else if there is a value. For example, let's say let marks equals 80, and then I say if marks less than or less than 30, print fail. If marks greater than or equal to 30 and less than or equal to 60, that is print average performance. And if it is, sorry, I will use else if, again giving me an error. I'll try to reconstruct this. Else if marks greater than equal to 30 and less than equal to 60, print average performance. Else print good performance. So I have if, else, if, not prefix unary. Okay, I have not used the variable marks less than equal to 60. Should be an else here. We have 3 conditions, and if I execute this now, it gives me good performance. All right, so this is about the if and if else if and if conditions. Then we have something known as a ternary operator. You might have come across ternary operator in Java. It gives you one output from the condition that you have. For example, I say var status equals true, and I can put up a ternary operator saying that var position equals status question mark, and then the positive value, I'll say pass, and if it is not true, I'll say fail. So the value of position would depend on status or any other condition. For example, my condition could be, let's say, if you already have marks at the top, so I can say if marks is greater than equal to 80, and I can say wonderful, and else we will say average. So there has to be some condition, and after the condition we put a question mark, and that question mark is going to be answering the result of this condition. If this condition is true, then the first value will be returned, and if the condition is false, the second value will be returned. This is called the ternary operator. Very similar to this operator, there is another operator called nil coalescing operator. You will understand this operator when we actually start programming, because I'll say var num of type integer. I'm not assigning any value to it. Okay. Since I've not assigned any value to it, the value basically is equal to nil. In actual Swift programming, when you're doing the actual development, this is not what you can actually do. You cannot assign nils directly to a variable. That's not permitted unless the value of that, or the value, the variable is of type optional. Otherwise, the value here in the playground is actually nil. So if I want to use a nil coalescing operator, I can actually say something like that, like num not equals nil, then take the value of num, otherwise pass in 0. So I can say var val equals num. Let's say print it. So I'm printing num. If num is not equal to null, variable num used before being initialized. So that's the problem it will state. You cannot use num before it has a value, right? So you can check. Sometimes what happens is you'll not be having a value at all. So in this case, I am going to say that num can be optional. Okay, num can be optional. So num does not have a value. It may or may not have a value, because the value might be coming from internet. It might be coming from another class or another page, and probably the value does not exist at this point of time because of the status of the class. So here is saying expression coerced with nil, which is again an optional. So here I'm actually checking if num is equal to nil. If it is equal to nil, of course, I'll have a crash. But otherwise, I can force unbox it. This is called unboxing or unwrapping. I'll unwrap the value of num, because I have already checked that num is not equal to nil. So this is called null coalescing operator, in which we check whether the value of the operator value exists or not. So this helps us in not getting into null pointer exceptions, right? We have spoken a little bit about ranges. Okay, ranges we have done, like in the for loop, we have 1 to 5 range, or we have striding from 10 to 1 with some steps. But there is another form of a range, which is called one-sided range. I'm trying to tell you a little bit of new operators which are there. These are called one-sided ranges or half-range operators. For example, I have var names equal, and I create an array: Alex, Joes, Max, Raj, Eliana, James. So one-sided range is a in which you are interested in starting from a particular point or ending in a particular point, rather than running for loops with the index. So I can run a for loop on an index by saying for statement, and I can say I index in not this for loop. Yeah, I can say index in not index. I'll use the term name in. I can use names. From the names, I want a close range where a close range would be 2 dot dot dot, and I'll print the name. See the output and try to understand what this close range operation is doing. 2 till the end. Alex is at index 0, Joe's is at index 1, Max is at index 2. So we started with Max, Raj, Aliana, James. This is one-sided range, or we can call them as half open range operator. We can use the reverse as well, dot, 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 3. So from the beginning till 3. We can use while loop with the count, or this is one operator that you can use where I'm using from the beginning till third index. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Till the third index we are moving. This is a half range operator. Let's move to switch. Now switches are really powerful in Swift. Unlike Java, they allow you to do a lot of operations in a short code. The block of the code that you execute can have multiple conditions. What I mean by multiple conditions is a case. Generally in Java, the cases are like you have to work on cases with the single value only. But in Swift, cases can run over multiple values. They can run over ranges. They can run over tuples. So switches are quite powerful. We'll start with the basic syntax. So I'll create a switch, and it has a value. All right. So let me say let integer equals 10. So now I have a value switch that will operate on a kind of value. I'll run the value on integer, and we have to provide patterns. The patterns are basically values that you want to compare. Let's say I want to compare with 10, 0, and the code. Now, unlike Java or JavaScript, it is not mandatory in Swift to close a case with a break. You can make a note of it. It is not mandatory to close a case with a break. Make another note. Every case that you have should have at least one executable statement. You cannot have empty cases that fall through. Okay? So there has to be at least one executable statement, and that executable statement can also be a break. So for example, if it is 100, you don't want to do anything. So you just break the case. You don't do anything. You don't type anything. You don't execute any statement. You just put a break. But there has to be at least one executable statement. So I'll just say print not matching, and I'll clear another case 10. And I can say print value matched, and then default I can say print unknown value, right? So we have an unknown value here. Generally, if you take switch statements in other languages, the default is mandatory. Okay. Now in Swift, there are certain conditions that you will come across in which the cases are exhaustive. The statement when I say the cases are exhaustive means the cases that we put here, they cover all the conditions that are possible for the switch value. If they cover all the possible scenarios which this integer can come across, in that case, default is not mandatory. Okay, so three things. One is break is not mandatory. If a condition is satisfied, the switch statement will automatically stop. Second, every case has to have at least one executable statement, and that statement can be a break. Third, if your switch case is exhaustive, that means it covers all the possible scenarios, then default is not mandatory. Now I'll show you certain scenarios where this is the base thing that you have seen, normal switch that you can see in any language. Now let's see at some of the advanced versions of switch. So I say let vowel equals A, right? I want to check whether the vowel, the character, instead of vowel, I'll say char, whether the char is a vowel or not. So in a normal language, Java or something, the way that you have to operate a switch is you have to do a switch. I will run the switch on the char, and you have to probably do something like this: A print it is a vowel, then again put a case A, and I'll just copy this and put it here. Now this I have to do at least 10 times, A, E, I, O, U. I have to do that. But Swift is powerful enough to save your time and coding effort. I can do that in a single line. I can have multiple cases in a single line. I can say A, comma, A, comma, E, comma, E, A, E, I, O, O, and U, right? It's a vowel. And the default I'll write print, it is a consonant, right? So I can have a case which can handle multiple values. So if I run this up, it's going to show me it's a vowel. And if I change this to P, it's going to show me that it's a consonant. Yeah. So this is a very powerful feature in which you can have multiple values included in your switch case. And like I said, there is no fall through. If you don't type the word break, it does not mean that the cases will continue to operate. Break is not mandatory. It does not. This is called fall through. We don't have a fall through in switch case in Swift. We can also have switches with ranges. So range is again one thing that we can use in switch. For instance, I can create, let's say, a let what do you call, what you say now? Let's say count equals, let's say something. I don't care what the value is, and let's say I have a switch on the count. I can use the range. I can use combination of values. I can use different types of values. So I say let's 0. So if it is 0, print this is not a natural number, or yeah, it's not a natural number. It falls under whole numbers, not natural numbers. Then I can have cases with ranges 1 to 9. Print single digit number. Case 10 to 99. Print double digit number. Case 100 to 999. Print 3-digit number. What's wrong here? Oh, I put the case in the wrong place here. And default, I'll call this as print large number. Uh-oh. So I can use range operators in switch cases. Since this is 40, it should actually print this is a double-digit number, and that's what it does. There's one thing that I wanted to just close up for today is about fall through. Like I said, we'll talk about that negative values later. But ranges in Swift are positive, only positive ranges, and they run from top to bottom. They cannot be reversed. You cannot have the upper limit less than the lower limit. Okay, right. Any other questions? Did you understand how we are doing this? This is called compound casing, and this is with I can use literals, and I can even use ranges. I think I can use case is not that way. Okay, that would be a different way of doing it. I'll see that. So now there is one thing I will also talk about is there are possibilities where there can be two conditions which are matching to a single switch. For example, let's say I'll say what let number equals 5, and I put a switch on number, and here I'm going to put some pattern like 2 3 5 7 11 13 17 19. What are these? Prime numbers. These are, I'm going to print number is prime.
Hello everyone. Intellipaat has an iOS development training course where you will get trained by industry experts. In this course, you will learn all the important concepts such as iOS architecture, iOS SDK, Objective-C, core data services, testing, and many more. Reach out to us if you are interested in knowing more details about our program.
However, it's also an integer. So print number is an integer. It's a prime, but it's also an integer, right? Now I actually want to execute both these statements because both of them are true, right? Or let me possibly say it's a natural number. So if I give -5, it won't work, okay? But I'm given 5, and since it's a prime, it's also a natural number. Now I want to execute both these statements because both the conditions are true. In these cases where you actually want to execute more than one switch, you can use a keyword called fall through. Fall through is a keyword which will force the next case to execute no matter what the condition is. Even if the condition is not satisfied, the case will execute. So now with 5, which is a prime number, you will see two print statements. It is prime and it is a natural number. So that's what we do with the fall through. We don't need an explicit break. But if you want to execute more than one cases, no matter what the condition is, if the first condition is satisfied, you want to run the immediate next case, you can use fall through. So this is how you can use conditions in cases. I can say just let's say x, whatever the value is coming, count is equal to x, and x is less than 0, then it's a negative value. So this way you can also use conditions. I'll talk about this with another example using tuples, where we'll use these cases in a different way. But we can also use conditions, where clauses in switches. And you can see here in a single switch, I have 3 different types of cases. There is a numeric value, there are ranges, and there are conditions, where clauses, to check what is the type of data that you're receiving. I guess these things are not available in Kotlin, right? Yeah, they're not there. This is something unique to Swift, and it's really powerful here with switches. It saves a lot of time. All right, guys. Okay.
Sounds
All right,
good.
guys. That's all from me today. Hope you have a good weekend. And if you find time, please do a little bit of practice on these new things that are totally new to you. These concepts are not there in other languages. So this will, if you practice a bit, it will help you understand the environment better. And probably you will do some mistakes, and you might understand this environment a little better, this language a little better. Okay. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Intellipaat has an iOS development training course where you will get trained by industry experts. In this course, you will learn all the important concepts such as iOS architecture, iOS SDK, Objective-C, core data services, testing, and many more. Reach out to us if you are interested in knowing more details about our program.